Picture this. You're walking down a street in Bangkok, Jakarta, or even Queens, New York. You see a bright red cartoon character waving at you, a chubby snowman with a crown and a scepter that looks like an ice cream cone. You walk into the shop. The menu board stops you cold. A soft-serve ice cream cone costs, wait for it, $1.19. A freshly squeezed lemonade, 60 cents. In 2025, in major cities, you'd probably assume this is some tiny local hole in the wall that's going to go bankrupt next month, right? Wrong. Welcome to Mixue Ice Cream and Tea, the biggest restaurant chain on planet Earth that you've probably never heard of. And yes, I said biggest. With over 53,000 stores globally, Mixue officially overtook McDonald's and Starbucks combined in terms of sheer footprint. They just listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in March 2025, with a valuation hitting $3.4 billion. But here's the brain twister. They're not really in the business of selling ice cream, at least not to you. Today we're pulling back the curtain on how a street vendor in central China, who got shut down by city authorities 4 times, built a logistics machine so ruthlessly efficient that it's now conquering Southeast Asia and landing in America. And more importantly, why their business model is either genius or a ticking time bomb. This is the Mixue playbook. Our story starts in 1997 in Zhengzhou, a gritty, landlocked city in central China that most Westerners couldn't point to on a map. Zhang Hongqiao, let's call him H.C. Zhang, was a 20-year-old kid with basically zero capital. He starts selling shaved ice from a roadside stall, just crushed ice, syrup, and hustle. But here's the thing about doing business in booming Chinese cities in the 90s. Street vendors were technically illegal. City management would roll through and demolish your cart. HC got demolished 4 times. 4. Most people would have quit after the second demolition, but HC had this epiphany. If I'm going to survive, I can't compete on fancy branding or premium locations. I have to be so cheap that even if I'm operating from a hole in the wall, people will hunt me down. So he pivoted to ice cream, specifically the cheapest possible soft serve. And in 2006, he opened his first actual storefront in a tiny alley in Zhengzhou with a price point that seemed suicidal. 1 yuan. That was about 15 US cents at the time. It worked. Not because the ice cream was mind-blowing, it was fine, but because in a country where hundreds of millions of people were just entering the consumer economy, affordability was the ultimate luxury. Now, here's where Mixue diverges from everything you know about fast food chains. When you think McDonald's or Starbucks, you think corporate owns the store or they charge massive franchise fees to handpick wealthy operators. Mixue looked at that model and said, that's way too slow. Instead, they pioneered something that looks more like Amazon Web Services, but for tea shops. Here's the breakdown. 98% of Mixue's revenue doesn't come from people buying ice cream. It comes from selling raw materials to their franchisees. And think about that. The cup, the straw, the sugar syrup, the tea leaves, the powder, the ice cream mix. Mixue manufactures all of it in-house and forces franchisees to buy it exclusively from them. It's like the California gold rush. Most prospectors went broke, but the guys selling shovels and jeans, they got rich. Mixue isn't gambling on whether your particular neighborhood store will succeed. They win the moment the franchisee opens the door because the franchisee has to buy Mixue's supplies forever. The genius? The barrier to entry is stupidly low. Opening a Mixue store costs roughly $29,000 US total. Compare that to McDonald's, where you need $1 million in liquid assets just to apply. And for that $29,000, Mixue handles the scary stuff. Supply chain, logistics, even staff training. Franchisees just find a spot and hire local kids. This is why they can open thousands of stores per year without burning cash. In 2024 alone, they opened nearly 10,000 new locations. That's not a growth curve, that's a vertical line. Okay, but how do you actually make money selling 15-cent ice cream? The answer is vertical integration on steroids. Most food chains outsource everything. McDonald's doesn't own cattle ranches, Starbucks doesn't own coffee plantations. Not really. Mixue, they said, we'll do it all. They own lemon orchards in Sichuan province, thousands of acres. They own the factories that make the paper cups. They own the trucks that deliver them. They have 27 warehouses covering 300 cities. They even manufacture their own ice cream machines. This is called supply chain Domination. By cutting out every middleman, they squeeze margins down to the atomic level. Their gross profit margin is around 32%, which sounds low for food, but when you're moving the volume they are, 500 million cups served per month, it adds up to nearly $500 million in annual profit. But there's a darker side to this efficiency that we need to talk about it. Because the entry cost is so low and the brand is so popular, internal competition is brutal. Mixue allows franchisees to open stores dangerously close to each other. In dense Chinese cities, you might find 3 Mixue shops on the same block. The message from headquarters is essentially, may the strongest franchisee win. We'll just keep selling you both the bullets. It's harsh, but it ensures only the most efficient operators survive, and it keeps the brand hyper-visible. So, 53,000 stores in China is impressive, but can this model travel? In 2018, Mixue quietly opened its first international store in Vietnam. By 2025, they had 1,300 stores there and became the largest bubble tea chain in the country. Indonesia? 2,600 stores. They're now bigger than Starbucks in Southeast Asia. The playbook translated perfectly. Emerging markets in Southeast Asia have the same characteristics as third-tier Chinese cities: price-sensitive consumers, hot weather, and a huge population of aspiring small business owners who want to open a shop but don't have McDonald's money. But here's where it gets spicy. In late 2024, Mixue opened its first U.S. locations in Queens, New York, and Southern California. And they didn't adjust the prices for American rents. We're talking $1.19 for ice cream, $1.50 for milk tea. In Queens, that's cheaper than a bottle of water at JFK Airport. The strategy? They're not trying to beat Starbucks on experience. They're trying to see if the extreme value brand can work in America's immigrant communities first. Places where you've got a mix of students, budget-conscious families, and nostalgia for the brands they knew back home. Like, it's a beachhead strategy. If they can survive Manhattan-level rents with $1.19 products, they can survive anywhere. All right, time for some real talk, because this model isn't without cracks. First, quality control. When you're growing this fast, 10,000 stores a year, how do you maintain standards? Mixue has faced food safety scandals, particularly in Indonesia, where they temporarily lost their halal certification in 2023 because of supply chain mix-ups. That's a death sentence in Muslim-majority markets. Second, franchisee fatigue. When you have 53,000 plus stores, you're bound to have thousands of unhappy operators working on razor-thin margins. If Mixue squeezes their supply prices too hard, or if local competition gets too fierce, the franchisees, their actual customers, start losing money and revolting. And third, the American question. Can a business model built on 15-cent products survive in a country where labor costs are 10 times higher than in China? Then there's the American math problem. Back in China, Mixue can hire staff for a few $100s a month. In New York City? Try $5,000. So how do you sell a $1 ice cream when your rent is Manhattan-level brutal? Mixue's answer is automation. Fewer employees, more machines, and insane foot traffic. But here's the existential risk. If they eventually have to bump prices to $3 just to break even, they're no longer the ultra-budget disruptor. They're just another dessert chain in a crowded market. And at $3, you're suddenly competing with actual premium ice cream, not Starbucks. So, what can Western founders and investors learn from the Snowman Empire? First, B to B to. C beats B to C. Don't just sell to consumers. Sell the infrastructure to the people selling to consumers. It's lower risk, more predictable revenue, and it scales faster than capital-heavy corporate ownership. Second, the sinking market is the rising market. While Silicon Valley obsesses over premium customers in San Francisco and London, Mixue proved that the real money is in the sinking markets, the Tier 3 and 4 cities, the college towns, the emerging economies. There are 5 billion people on Earth who want decent quality at rock-bottom prices. That's a bigger market than the 1%ers. Third, control your supply chain, or your supply chain will control you. In an era of supply chain chaos, Mixue's decision to own everything from the lemon tree to the cash register looks prescient, not paranoid. Will Mixue conquer America? Honestly, probably not in the way Starbucks did, but they don't need to. They're playing a different game, one about volume, logistics, and the democratization of cold drinks. They've proven that with the right supply chain, you can sell happiness for pocket change. And in an economy where everything keeps getting more expensive, that's a powerful value proposition. So, next time you see that chubby red snowman waving at you from a street corner, whether it's in Bangkok, Beijing, or Brooklyn, remember, you're not just looking at an ice cream shop. You're looking at one of the most sophisticated logistics companies on Earth disguised as a dessert stand. Thanks for listening. Next episode, we're looking at how another Chinese company, Shine, used similar supply chain warfare to conquer fast fashion. Hit subscribe if you want to understand the business models that are actually winning in the 2020s. And drop a comment. Would you buy a $1.19 ice cream in Manhattan? I'm curious. I'm your host, and this is China Business Insider. Stay sharp and see you next time.